Great to have your company. Well, many Australians are experiencing financial stress with interest rate rises and cost of living pressures, but some experts are saying it is not time to press the panic button just yet. Real estate contributor Kirsten Craze joins me live. Good afternoon to you, Kirsten. How are you?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So why shouldn't we have the panic button on just yet?
Well, I think it does sound expensive when you think that the mortgage is going to go up and it's no fun, but we need to put it in perspective because we're only going to go up to potentially the cash rate might go up to about 3%, the experts and economists are thinking. So what that means is we're not anywhere near the kind of territory. Someone who's getting out of a home loan now that they've had for close to 30 years can remember much tougher times in double digits.
So we've got the cost of living pressures also affecting us. Fuel increases, the minimum wage has just gone up or announced that it's going to go up very shortly. So it's that balancing act, isn't it? Because it's just working out where to put the money to good use. But also, as you've mentioned, you know, the interest rates are going up and they've got to go to the mortgage.
Yeah. So the mortgage is going to go up. I think what we've realised, Australians know that during lockdown we had some extra money parked in our bank accounts or extra pocket money that we weren't spending. We weren't travelling. We weren't going out to anywhere near as much as we did prior to COVID. So there was extra money to spend on discretionary things that maybe we didn't before. So we went through a list of some things that we thought that if homeowners want to try and offset that amount of money that they might be having to pay for the next year or two, that increase in the interest rates, that they might be able to pull back on a few of the other things that is not fun, but it's things that you probably don't need to be spending money on that you can curtail a little bit.
All right, and what are some of those things?
Okay, so the cliche, I suppose, is the coffee or the smashed avocado on toast. Those breakfasts, those sorts of things, they can add up to, we're talking, if you sort of have one or two coffees a week, it could be anything from $400 to $1,000 a year. Then you think about a weekend breakfast. If you live in any of the metropolitan areas, brekkies can be quite expensive. I know it's nice on a weekend, but they could add up to potentially $1,000 a week.
It's
hard, then you've got food. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. Sorry.
I was going to add in there while we were talking about what we're eating, that food delivery has obviously gone off the charts, particularly during lockdown. That's one treat people had for themselves while they were locked in. But we discovered that Australians are spending around $1,590 a year on food delivery.
Well, it was a good use, wasn't it, when we certainly were in lockdown or in isolation. But yeah, it's interesting to see that amount of money. I guess the other side, you've got to think of the people that have the cafes and so forth. They need those people to go in. So perhaps it's having one coffee when you're there as opposed to two or three. But banks and financial advisors, they did have to stress test the loans over the past couple of years at least. So hopefully, you know, this has been factored in as well for people's budget.
Yeah, well, up until October last year, they had to factor in what they call the stress test, as you said, a serviceability buffer of 2.5%. And then from October, that increased to 3%. So if the if the interest rates go up to what experts are predicting, then you actually should be fine if nothing's changed in the household budget. That increase will be absorbed by what the banks or your lender has already decided that you can afford to pay.
And also, what about, you know, speaking to the lender and seeing if they can offer a better deal? I know obviously a lot of people will be locked into certain deals, but those contracts can, you know, come around quite quickly and things can change there.
Absolutely. I think when something like this happens, we can become complacent when we've had such historically low interest rates for a long time and it's been cheap to borrow money. It's starting to become less cheap. So it's probably a really good wake-up call to say, okay, I'm going to call my bank. And you're right, if you're not fixed into something at the moment, it's the time to talk to the lender, ask, can I have a better deal? And if they don't have a better deal, someone else might. And you're not restricted to stay with that bank just because you've been banking with them for X amount of years.
And I guess as well, it's looking at, your fixed loans and your variables. Sometimes, well, at the moment, sometimes we're seeing those variable loans lower than the fixed, but sometimes,
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not an expert, but I've heard from certain experts, depending on, your situation, but to have a combination of the fixed and variables.
Yeah, you can always split your loan if you want to hedge your bets and you just feel a bit more comfortable. That can make it feel a little bit more manageable. If you have, you don't have to go 50-50. You can work with what percentage you want to fix and what you don't want to fix. Obviously, the lenders, the fixed rates are higher than the variable, but that's assurance for them. And those fixed rates started to go up earlier than what the variable has because everybody was expecting that there would be a rise on the horizon. So you'll be paying a little bit more if you fix part of it, but then you might have that peace of mind that you know what you're going to be spending for the next year or 2 or 5.
What about the lucky people that locked in a fixed contract to like 1.9%, for example, and they know it's coming up and then boom, it's going to go up. They're going to be in for a bit of a rude shock. They're the ones, I guess, that'll be a bit nervous.
Sure, absolutely. But then again, they have in theory, had that stress tested, so they should be able to afford it. But again, you can become complacent thinking, this is how much I spend on my mortgage every month, and then I've got extra pocket money to do other things. So it's just being able to realise when that's coming up, knowing when your fixed rate is going to finish, and just calculating how much am I going to have to spend when that changes, and every month after that, as we're on this upward trajectory.
And coming out of contracts as well. So if you are in a fixed loan and then wanting to pull out of that, again, you've got to look at the ramifications in terms of, contracts and getting out of contract fees if you decide that, it's too much and you need to sell and so forth.
Yeah, it does become expensive when you try to break contracts, just with anything really in life. But if you, a lot of the fixed rate loans, they're not for the life of the loan anymore. They used to be in the good old 80s. But now you sort of only have a certain period of time that you're in a fixed. So you just need to really calculate what the break fees will be and how much you can afford and what's in your best interest.
Yeah, lots of questions to ask the banks, right? And you can read more in the local News Corp papers today. You've written an article about all of this with lots of tips, so it's excellent. Yeah. What else can we read on that besides skipping a coffee?
Well, I think, we like to unwind on a Friday afternoon or evening after work now that we're back in the office, for those who are. But that could be just one glass of wine after work could be $500 a week. So then there's things like the average gym membership is $780 a year. But I think that I'd read that about 50% of people use that to their full capacity. So do you really need to go out to the gym, or is there a park you can exercise in? There's a lot of things that we think we need to spend money on that perhaps we don't need to.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Just tweaking the figures around in your budget, it can certainly make a big difference. So, real estate contributor Kirsten Craze, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to reading more of the article, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Janie.